Emotional pain is something every human being knows too well. It is that invisible wound that lingers beneath the surface, showing up in the quiet moments of the night or in the sudden heaviness of a normal day. Most people spend their lives trying to escape it, hide it, or numb it with distractions. Yet Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists and thinkers of the modern era, believed that pain is never meaningless. To him, emotional suffering carries a hidden message, a symbolic voice from the unconscious calling us toward a deeper truth. Rather than seeing pain as an enemy, Jung invites us to approach it as a teacher. In his eyes, our suffering contains clues about who we are, what we have ignored, and what parts of our soul long to be seen. To begin to understand this, we have to acknowledge something uncomfortable. Pain is inevitable, but it is not random. When heartbreak devastates us, when rejection cuts deep, or when loss brings us to our knees, we often feel powerless. But Jung argued that pain has an archetypal dimension, meaning it is part of a universal human story. Just like myths and dreams, our suffering holds symbolic meaning. The ache of loneliness, for instance, may point to our neglected ability to connect deeply with others. The sharp sting of envy may be showing us where we have abandoned our own potential. Grief may reveal how much we truly love, and how that love itself is indestructible even when someone is gone. Jung believed that modern people often misunderstand suffering. We live in a culture obsessed with quick fixes. If something hurts, we want to suppress it. If life feels empty, we want to fill the void with entertainment or possessions. But in this avoidance, we miss the deeper wisdom. Emotional pain, to Jung, is like a dream, filled with symbols, asking to be interpreted. It does not simply say, "You are hurt." It says, "Here is a message from your soul." The trouble is, most people refuse to listen. He often described the unconscious as something that sends us signals. If we ignore them, they grow louder. First, it may come as mild dissatisfaction, a faint sense that something is off. Ignore it, and it becomes anxiety. Avoid it again, and it becomes depression or a crisis. In this sense, emotional pain is a form of communication. It is not punishing us, but trying to awaken us. It forces us to confront what we would rather deny. That confrontation is painful, but also transformative. Consider how people change after heartbreak. In the midst of it, everything feels shattered. Yet many people look back and say that those moments, though agonizing, forced them to discover strength they never knew they had, or to question patterns that were keeping them stuck. Jung would say this is no accident. Pain carves new paths inside us, making room for growth. He compared suffering to alchemy, where raw lead is transformed into gold. The lead is our pain, heavy and dark. The gold is the new consciousness that emerges when we face it. It is also important to note that Jung did not romanticize suffering. He did not suggest that people should seek it or that all suffering is noble. Rather, he said that when it arrives, instead of rejecting it outright, we should ask, "What is this trying to teach me?" Pain may be unwanted, but it is often purposeful. Like a fever in the body, it signals that something is out of balance. And just as a fever pushes toxins out, emotional pain pushes hidden truths to the surface. Think about the common pain of feeling inadequate. Many people silently battle the belief that they are not enough. On the surface, it seems like a cruel thought, but Jung would invite us to look deeper. Why does this belief appear? What hidden demand of the soul is it pointing toward? Often, the feeling of inadequacy is linked to our shadow, the part of ourselves we repress. We compare ourselves to others because we have disowned our own gifts. The pain of not being enough is a signpost, urging us to reclaim those lost aspects of ourselves. The suffering is unbearable only until we begin to see its meaning. Once we do, it guides us back to wholeness. In this sense, Emotional pain is inseparable from the process of individuation, which was Jung's central idea. Individuation is the journey of becoming who we truly are. It means integrating all parts of the self, the conscious and unconscious, the light and the shadow, the wounds and the strengths. Pain plays a vital role in this process because it points to the gaps. It tells us where we are divided. It highlights the inner fractures we need to heal. Without pain, we might remain asleep, drifting through life without ever confronting what truly matters. Jung also noticed that pain often carries a symbolic quality. A person who feels abandoned may discover that the deeper message is about reconnecting with their own inner source of support rather than relying solely on others. Someone who constantly feels anxious may uncover that beneath the anxiety is a call to develop trust in life, in themselves, or in something greater. Emotional pain is rarely literal. It is symbolic, much like the images that appear in dreams. This is why Jung encouraged people to pay attention not only to their dreams, but also to the patterns in their emotional lives. Both are languages of the unconscious. Both are trying to guide us. This idea radically shifts how we might respond to suffering. Instead of asking, "How can I get rid of this pain?" we might ask, "What is this pain asking of me?" That question transforms suffering from a curse into a teacher. It does not make the pain vanish instantly, but it gives it meaning. And when pain has meaning, it becomes bearable, even purposeful. Viktor Frankl, a student of Jung's era, echoed this sentiment when he said that suffering ceases to be suffering the moment it finds meaning. One of the most striking things Jung wrote is that neurosis, the common psychological struggles of life, often comes from not listening to our pain. He said that neurosis is basically suffering that has not been faced, suffering that has been repressed or avoided. Instead of engaging with the hidden message, we build defenses, we numb ourselves, or we distract ourselves endlessly. The result is that the pain sinks deeper into the unconscious and begins to control us in ways we do not see. This is why Jung insisted that facing pain is not optional if we want to grow. It is essential. Consider the myth of the wounded healer, which Jung often referred to. The healer is someone who has been deeply wounded, but uses that very wound as a source of wisdom and compassion. Emotional pain, when faced directly, can turn us into wounded healers. It gives us insight into the human condition that no book or theory can teach. People who have suffered profoundly often become the very ones who can comfort others in their suffering. Pain makes us human, and when integrated, it makes us whole. Jung's perspective also helps us understand why people repeat painful patterns. Someone who repeatedly chooses partners who hurt them, for instance, is not simply unlucky. According to Jung, the psyche creates these repetitions because the lesson has not yet been integrated. The unconscious arranges life in such a way that the hidden message keeps returning until it is heard. In this way, emotional pain acts almost like a guidepost that keeps pointing in the same direction until we finally follow. It is not fate being cruel. It is the unconscious insisting that we face what we have avoided. This can feel frustrating, even unfair. But once we see the pattern, we realize it is not meant to punish but to liberate. The repeated heartbreak is urging us to value ourselves. The repeated failures may be urging us to align with our true calling. The repeated disappointments may be telling us to stop chasing illusions and start embracing authenticity. The hidden message is always about growth, and until we listen, the pain persists. Jung also pointed out that much of our emotional pain comes from living inauthentically. When we wear masks to please others, when we hide our real desires, or when we suppress our creativity, the psyche suffers. The pain that follows is a signal that we have strayed from our path. It is as if the soul is saying, I will not let you rest until you return to what is true. That inner protest is painful, but it is also an act of love. It is the soul refusing to let us settle for less than what we are meant to be. At this point, you might ask, how do we actually listen to our pain? Jung would say that the first step is to stop running from it. That alone is revolutionary. Instead of numbing ourselves with constant activity, we can pause and feel. We can allow the sadness, the anger, the grief to rise. By giving it space, we begin to hear its voice. Sometimes it speaks through images, sometimes through dreams, sometimes through persistent thoughts or bodily sensations. The key is not to analyze it like a problem to solve, but to be in dialogue with it, to ask, "What are you trying to tell me?" This requires patience and courage. Emotional pain does not reveal its meaning instantly. Often, it speaks in riddles and symbols. But if we are willing to sit with it, the message slowly emerges. Maybe the sadness is pointing to a part of us we abandoned in childhood. Maybe the anger is showing us where our boundaries have been violated. Maybe the loneliness is asking us to build deeper connections. The answers are unique to each person, but the principle is universal. Pain speaks if we listen. When Jung spoke about listening to our pain, he emphasized that we should treat it almost like a person, an inner figure with something to say. In his method of active imagination, he would even encourage people to sit quietly, close their eyes, and allow the painful feeling to take form in the imagination. Perhaps the sadness appears as a child, or the anger as a fiery figure, or the fear as a shadowy creature. By dialoguing with these images, the unconscious communicates in a language deeper than words. Pain becomes not just an emotion, but a symbol, and once engaged, it begins to transform. The transformation does not come from repressing or denying pain, but from entering into relationship with it. For Jung, every painful feeling we reject becomes part of the shadow, the hidden side of ourselves that we keep out of consciousness. The shadow is not just made up of bad qualities. It also contains positive traits that we have been unwilling to claim. But the shadow always leaks through, and it often does so in the form of emotional suffering. So when we feel pain, what we are often encountering is a message from the shadow. Look at me, integrate me. Stop pretending I don't exist. Imagine someone who has always suppressed their anger because they were taught that anger is unacceptable. They may grow up being outwardly calm, even passive. Yet, deep down, the suppressed anger festers. It leaks out as depression, as bitterness, or as sudden outbursts. The emotional pain they feel is the psyche's way of saying, you cannot remain whole by cutting off a part of yourself. The hidden message behind the pain is not, you are broken, but you are incomplete, and this part of you must be brought into the light. This process is difficult, because facing the shadow is uncomfortable. Jung described it as confronting the dragon that guards the treasure. The dragon is terrifying, our shame, our guilt, our raw pain. But behind it lies the treasure, our lost vitality, our true self. The emotional pain is the dragon's roar, frightening us, but also calling us to courage. If we flee, the dragon grows larger. If we turn and face it, we find the treasure. The treasure is not the absence of pain, but the transformation of it. Jung wrote often about the idea of holding the tension of the opposites. That means instead of trying to eliminate suffering, we learn to hold both the pain and the possibility of growth at the same time. For example, when someone experiences rejection, they may feel worthless. But alongside that pain lies the possibility of discovering self-worth independent of others' approval. The person's task is not to deny the hurt, nor to drown in it, but to hold it while allowing the deeper meaning to emerge. This holding is where transformation happens. It is worth noting that Jung himself was no stranger to pain. After his break with Freud, he entered a period of profound inner crisis, sometimes described as a near-psychotic breakdown. He was haunted by visions, dreams, and overwhelming emotions. Instead of running from them, he engaged them, recording his inner journey in what would later be known as the Red Book. This period of darkness, filled with pain and uncertainty, became the fertile ground for his greatest insights. Jung lived what he taught. That emotional pain, when faced directly, becomes a doorway to deeper understanding. Many people, however, find it almost impossible to believe that their pain has meaning while they are in the middle of it. When grief is fresh, or heartbreak is raw, or anxiety is suffocating, the suggestion that this suffering carries a hidden message can feel cruel. Jung acknowledged this. He knew that interpretation must come gradually. Sometimes, the first step is simply to endure, to allow the pain to be present without demanding immediate answers. Only with time does the symbolic meaning begin to show itself. Pain is like a seed planted in darkness. Its growth is invisible at first, but eventually it breaks through into awareness. One way to recognize the hidden message is to notice patterns. Our pain is rarely isolated. It often repeats itself in different situations. Someone may notice that they always feel abandoned in relationships, or that they repeatedly experience failure in their work, or that they continually feel overlooked. These repeating wounds are not coincidences. They are the unconscious staging a drama to bring a message to consciousness. The task is to ask, why does this theme keep appearing? What truth am I avoiding that this pain is insisting I face? Take the example of someone who repeatedly feels abandoned. On the surface, they might conclude that people are simply unreliable. But if they look deeper, they may discover that the feeling of abandonment traces back to childhood, to a parent who was emotionally unavailable. Their psyche recreates the pattern, not to torture them, but to give them a chance to confront the original wound and to learn self-reliance, boundaries, and authentic connection. The hidden message is, you must heal this wound by becoming the source of love you never received. Without this recognition, the cycle repeats endlessly. With it, the cycle becomes an opportunity for growth. Jung also emphasized the symbolic relationship between body and psyche. Emotional pain does not remain purely emotional. It often expresses itself in the body. Headaches, stomach issues, fatigue, and chronic tension can all be physical expressions of unprocessed emotional wounds. When the unconscious cannot speak through dreams or emotions, it may speak through the body. In this way, the body itself becomes a messenger. Rather than treating the body as malfunctioning, Jung would encourage us to ask, what is this symptom saying? What emotional truth does it represent? By translating the body's signals into meaning, we honor the hidden message behind the pain. Another key insight is that emotional pain often points us toward the unlived life. Jung wrote that the greatest burden of the psyche is the unlived life within us. This means that the things we avoid, suppress, or neglect, our passions, our creativity, our authenticity, do not simply disappear. They become sources of suffering. Emotional pain may be telling us, there is more of you waiting to be lived. For instance, someone trapped in a career they hate may develop depression. The depression is not only about chemical imbalance or bad luck. It may be the soul's way of saying, you are living someone else's life, not your own. The hidden message is a call to reclaim the unlived parts of the self. Jung understood that this is a terrifying task. Following the message of our pain often means dismantling old identities, leaving behind familiar but suffocating roles, and venturing into the unknown. That is why many people resist it. But the cost of resistance is high. A lifetime of quiet despair, of symptoms that never heal, of cycles that never end. To follow the message of pain is to step into uncertainty, but also into authenticity. It is the hero's journey, the archetypal story found in myths across cultures. The hero descends into the underworld, suffers trials, confronts monsters, and emerges transformed. Our emotional pain is the call to this journey. It is our underworld. Yet there is another side to this. Jung warned that some people identify too much with their pain, turning it into an identity. Instead of listening to the message, they cling to the suffering itself. This can happen when someone feels special or defined by their wounds. In such cases, the hidden message becomes buried beneath the performance of victimhood. Jung urged balance. Acknowledge the pain fully, but do not let it become the entirety of who you are. Pain is a messenger, not a permanent identity. The goal is not to worship the suffering, but to transform it. Transformation often happens in small, quiet moments. Jung observed that the unconscious speaks softly, and if we do not cultivate attentiveness, we miss its voice. Journaling, dream work, therapy, or simply taking time to reflect can create the space where the meaning of pain begins to emerge. For example, writing down recurring feelings can reveal patterns we didn't notice before. Recording dreams can show us symbols that echo our waking struggles. Speaking with a trusted therapist or friend can help us see what we cannot see alone. Each of these practices helps decode the hidden message. There is also a communal dimension to pain. Jung believed that much of our suffering is not purely individual, but collective. The archetypes we carry are universal, and so our pain often connects us to the wider human story. When we grieve, we join countless others who have known grief. When we feel lost, we join a lineage of wanderers searching for meaning. Realizing this can soften the isolation of suffering. It reminds us that pain is not a private defect, but part of being human. The hidden message, in this sense, is connection. Our wounds link us to others. This is why sharing our stories can be healing. When we speak honestly about our struggles, others recognize themselves in our words. The pain that once isolated us becomes a bridge. Jung called this the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of human experience. Emotional pain is not only personal, it resonates with archetypal themes that everyone knows. Loss, love, betrayal, hope, fear, transformation. When we listen to our own pain, we are also listening to something deeply human, something that unites us with others across time and culture. Jung's insights remind us that healing is not about erasing the past or avoiding all suffering. It is about finding meaning within it. Pain will never vanish entirely, but it can transform from senseless agony into purposeful struggle. This is the difference between being crushed by suffering and being deepened by it. The first leaves us broken. The second leaves us wiser, more compassionate, more real. Jung believed that the soul's deepest task is not comfort, but wholeness. And wholeness often requires walking through the fire of pain to reach the other side. If we consider our own lives, we can often see this pattern. Think of a time when you endured hardship that seemed unbearable. At the time, it may have felt meaningless. But looking back, you may see that it changed you, shaped you, or revealed something important. Perhaps it forced you to let go of illusions. Perhaps it taught you resilience. Perhaps it deepened your empathy for others. That retrospective clarity is exactly what Jung meant by the hidden message of pain. It does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it is revealed only in hindsight, after the suffering has done its work. The challenge, then, is to cultivate trust. Trust that the pain we experience is not purely destructive, but also instructive. Trust that even in the darkest night, the psyche is guiding us toward transformation. Trust that the message, though hidden, is real. Jung would not say this makes pain easier, but it does give it dignity. It reminds us that suffering is not wasted. Every tear, every ache, Every silent scream carries within it the seed of meaning. And if we can listen, if we can endure long enough to hear the message, we find ourselves not diminished, but expanded. The process of uncovering the hidden message behind emotional pain is not something that happens overnight. Jung often spoke of it as a lifelong dialogue between the conscious and unconscious. We cannot simply force an answer to appear. Instead, we must cultivate a receptive attitude. Just as a seed does not sprout faster by being pulled at, the meaning of suffering reveals itself in its own time. Our task is to create the conditions for it to emerge. This requires patience, humility, and above all, honesty with ourselves. Honesty is perhaps the most difficult part. Many of us prefer comforting illusions over painful truths. We tell ourselves stories to soften the blow. It wasn't that important. I don't care. I'm fine. But the body knows. The psyche knows. Denial may buy us temporary relief, but it also deepens the wound. Jung insisted that facing the truth, however uncomfortable, is the only path to wholeness. Emotional pain, in this sense, is the psyche's protest against lies. It refuses to let us rest until we admit what is real. This is why dreams so often mirror our suffering. A person may insist they are content, but in their dreams they are lost in endless hallways or chased by shadowy figures. The dream exposes the hidden reality. There is fear, there is confusion, there is longing. Jung paid meticulous attention to dreams because they bypass the conscious defenses and speak directly from the unconscious. When emotional pain seems incomprehensible, our dreams often provide symbolic clues to its meaning. For example, recurring dreams of being trapped may reflect a waking life where we feel stifled, unable to express our true self. The pain we feel during the day is amplified in symbolic form at night. If we learn to interpret these images, we can uncover the message hidden within. But dreams are only one doorway. Life itself is filled with symbols. Our repeated experiences, our emotional triggers, the people we attract, all of these can function like dream images, pointing to the same unresolved truth. Imagine someone who feels enraged every time they are criticized. On the surface, they may believe they are simply sensitive. But if they look deeper, they may find that criticism touches an old wound of not feeling accepted by their parents. The hidden message behind their pain is that they must heal this childhood wound, reclaim their own sense of worth, and stop outsourcing validation. The repeated pain of criticism is not random. It is an echo from the past, inviting healing in the present. Jung often compared the psyche to nature. Just as the body has an innate drive to heal, so too does the psyche. If we cut ourselves, the body sends resources to close the wound. In the same way, if we suffer emotionally, the psyche pushes us toward wholeness. The difference is that psychic healing requires our participation. We must listen, reflect, and act. Ignoring emotional pain is like ignoring a physical wound. It festers, spreads, and weakens us. Listening to it is like cleaning and tending to the wound. It stings, but it allows healing to begin. One of the most profound hidden messages behind pain is that we are being called to expand. Pain contracts us. It tightens the chest, narrows the vision, makes us retreat inward. But beyond that contraction lies the potential for expansion. Think of heartbreak. At first, it feels like the world has collapsed. The future seems small and bleak. But if we lean into the message, heartbreak can expand our capacity for love, compassion, and resilience. It teaches us not only what hurts, but also what matters. It strips away illusions about who we thought we were and reveals who we really are. Pain shrinks us temporarily so that we can grow larger afterward. This expansion is not limited to the individual. Jung believed that when one person faces their pain honestly, It contributes to the healing of the collective. The unconscious is not just personal, it is collective, shared by humanity. That means our struggles are never entirely private. When we confront our shadow, we lighten the burden for others as well. By integrating our own pain, we create a ripple effect of consciousness that touches the wider world. This is why Jung placed such importance on individuation. It is not a selfish task, but a service to humanity. To heal ourselves is to heal a part of the collective. Consider how many conflicts in the world stem from unacknowledged pain. Nations, groups, and individuals project their unhealed wounds onto others, creating cycles of violence, prejudice, and hatred. Jung warned that what we do not face inwardly, we will project outwardly. Emotional pain that is ignored does not vanish. It seeks expression in destructive ways. This is as true for societies as it is for individuals. The hidden message behind our pain may therefore extend beyond our personal story. It may be urging us to break cycles that have persisted for generations, to stop repeating inherited patterns of suffering, and to create something new. At the same time, Jung recognized that no one can avoid suffering altogether. To live is to experience pain. What matters is not whether we suffer, but how we relate to that suffering. If we resist it, deny it, or identify with it completely, we remain trapped. If we face it with openness, we allow it to transform us. Jung compared this to the process of crucifixion and resurrection found in Christian symbolism. Pain is the crucifixion, the unbearable weight, the descent into darkness. Meaning is the resurrection, the new life that arises after we surrender to the experience. The message is not that suffering itself is good, but that it can lead to rebirth if we allow it to. In everyday life, this means shifting our relationship to our feelings. Instead of labeling them as bad and trying to get rid of them, we can approach them with curiosity. Sadness may be pointing us toward something we need to grieve and release. Anger may be telling us a boundary has been crossed. Fear may be warning us of danger, or it may be pushing us to develop courage. Each painful feeling carries information. Our task is to decode it, not suppress it. Jung once said that emotions are the language of the soul. If that is true, then ignoring our emotions is like ignoring our soul's voice. Listening, however painful, is a way of honoring our deepest self. It is here that Jung's ideas overlap with spiritual traditions. Many spiritual paths emphasize that pain is a teacher. Buddhism, for example, teaches that suffering arises from attachment and ignorance, and that by facing suffering, we can awaken to deeper truths. Christianity speaks of carrying one's cross, not as punishment, but as a path to transformation. Indigenous traditions often see pain as part of initiation, a way to grow into wisdom. Jung saw these parallels and believed that psychology and spirituality are not separate. Both recognize that pain is not meaningless, but full of symbolic significance. What does this mean for us practically? It means that when emotional pain arises, instead of asking why me, we might ask what for. The shift from why is this happening to me to what is this trying to teach me changes everything. The first question keeps us stuck in victimhood. The second opens us to growth. Of course, this does not mean we should blame ourselves for suffering. Life contains tragedy and injustice. But even in the face of unfair pain, we can ask what meaning we might create from it. The answer may not justify the suffering, but it can redeem it. For example, someone who loses a loved one may never stop grieving, nor should they. But the hidden message may be about honoring the depth of love they experienced, or about using their grief to connect more deeply with others who suffer. The pain remains, but it is transfigured into compassion. Another person who struggles with chronic anxiety may find that the hidden message is about developing inner strength, learning to trust life, and creating practices of calm that they never would have discovered otherwise. The suffering becomes a doorway to new skills and insights. Jung believed that the greatest danger is not pain itself, but meaninglessness. A person who suffers without meaning can be destroyed by even small hardships. But a person who suffers with meaning can endure immense trials. This is why listening for the hidden message is so crucial. It turns pain from chaos into a path. It does not eliminate the struggle, but it gives us direction. And with direction, we can endure. One of Jung's most powerful statements was that the gods have become diseases. By this, he meant that the archetypal forces, once honored in myth and ritual, now appear in disguised forms as psychological symptoms. Our emotional pain, then, may be the modern way in which these archetypal forces speak to us. Depression may be the descent into the underworld. Anxiety may be the call of the trickster. Loneliness may be the longing for union with the self. If we translate our pain into symbolic language, we discover that it is not random, but part of a much larger story. This perspective invites us to live mythically, to see our suffering not as isolated misfortune, but as part of the universal drama of transformation. Every myth has trials, darkness, and loss, but every myth also has meaning. Our lives are no different. To live mythically is to trust that our pain, however brutal, has significance beyond what we can immediately see. It means we are characters in a story that is larger than ourselves, and that our suffering is one chapter in a narrative of growth. Jung would often remind his patients that wholeness is not the same as perfection. Wholeness includes our wounds, our flaws, our pain. To strive for perfection is to deny our humanity. To strive for wholeness is to embrace it fully. Emotional pain is not evidence of failure. It is evidence of being alive, of being in the process of becoming whole. The hidden message, again and again, is that we are called to integrate, not to erase. As we begin to accept this, we may notice that our relationship to pain softens. We stop fearing it as an enemy and start respecting it as a guide. This does not make the suffering pleasant, but it makes it sacred. It becomes part of our dialogue with the self, the deeper center of our being that Jung described as the ultimate goal of individuation. Pain is one of the ways the self communicates with us. It disrupts our ordinary life to draw us toward a greater truth. And so, the next time we encounter emotional pain, we might pause. Instead of rushing to escape, we can listen. What does this hurt want me to know? What part of me is being ignored? What unlived life is calling? What pattern is being repeated? What myth am I being asked to live? These questions do not erase the suffering, but they transform it into a journey. And on that journey, we may discover that the very thing we thought was breaking us is the thing remaking us. Sometimes the most powerful healing happens not when we think our way through pain, but when we allow ourselves to feel it fully. Jung often emphasized that emotions are intelligent. They are not obstacles to reasoning, but signals of where our life has become imbalanced. Anxiety might mean that you have been ignoring your need for safety or grounding. Jealousy might mean you are suppressing your own desires while projecting them onto others. Loneliness might point toward a hidden gift of solitude you have not yet claimed, urging you to build a deeper relationship with yourself. Each emotion, if listened to with humility, offers direction. Pain is not a mistake. It is a teacher disguised as discomfort. But facing pain requires courage, and courage does not mean the absence of fear. It means moving forward even when fear is present. Jung knew that transformation was not about comfort, but about expansion. Growth feels like stretching, sometimes even breaking, because it pushes us beyond our known limits. Just as a seed must split open to allow a tree to grow, we too must allow the shattering of old identities to make way for new ones. The hidden message in pain is that something inside you wants to emerge, but it cannot do so while you cling to what is safe and familiar. There is also a collective dimension to this journey. Jung believed that humanity shares a collective unconscious, filled with archetypes and patterns that shape our lives. When you heal your pain, you are not just healing yourself. You are contributing to the healing of the collective. The courage to face your wounds ripples outward, affecting your family, your community, and even generations that follow. Sometimes the pain you carry does not even belong entirely to you. It may be ancestral, passed down through silence and repetition. To acknowledge it, to face it consciously, is to break the chain and offer freedom not only to yourself, but to those who come after you. If you reflect on your own life, you may see that some of the most defining moments were born from struggle. Perhaps a heartbreak led you to discover self-worth. Perhaps a failure redirected you toward a path more aligned with your gifts. Perhaps a period of isolation revealed your true strength. In the moment, these experiences felt unbearable, but looking back, you can see they were not meaningless. They were shaping you into someone who could see deeper, love fuller, and live truer. Jung's work teaches us to trust this process, even when we cannot yet see where it is leading. This does not mean glorifying suffering or seeking it out. It means recognizing that suffering, when it comes, has something to show us if we are willing to listen. The hidden message is not punishment but guidance. Your pain is not proof of your inadequacy. It is an invitation to wholeness. Each ache in the heart is a reminder that you are alive, and that life itself is urging you to grow into the fullness of who you are. To truly embrace this, one must cultivate a kind of reverence for life. Jung often spoke of individuation as a sacred process, a dialogue between the conscious and the unconscious, the personal and the universal. It requires patience, humility, and above all, honesty with oneself. If you avoid the truth of your feelings, you cut yourself off from the wisdom that pain carries. But if you meet your feelings with openness, even when they are sharp or heavy, they become allies rather than enemies. As you move through your own journey, consider this. What pain in your life have you tried to silence or escape? What would happen if instead of running from it, you sat with it quietly and asked, "What are you here to teach me?" The answer may not come immediately, but if you stay with the question, if you honor the message hidden beneath the ache, you will begin to see that every wound carries within it the possibility of transformation. And so, when you hear the phrase, the hidden message behind your emotional pain, remember that it is not about glorifying suffering, but about uncovering truth. Pain is the shadow knocking at the door, waiting for acknowledgement. It is the inner child longing to be seen. It is the unlived life asking to be lived. The hidden message is that you are more than the story of your suffering. You are the witness, the healer, and the soul in search of wholeness. Carl Jung's legacy reminds us that to live authentically is not to avoid pain, but to walk with it, to integrate it, and to allow it to shape us into more complete beings. The next time you feel the weight of sorrow, the fire of anger, or the chill of fear, pause. Do not turn away. Instead, ask what hidden truth is trying to rise. In that simple act of listening, you step into the timeless process of individuation, the journey of becoming who you truly are. So, let your pain speak. Let it reveal its hidden message. And trust that beneath the ache lies not only healing, but a deeper, richer, more authentic life. For in the language of the soul, pain is never the end of the story. It is the doorway into your truest beginning.